must give the motorist on the evening of his or her arrest a copy of their results. They must. It's mandatory. The language is mandatory in Chun, and that is critical. It says, upon completion of the test, the operator shall make 2 copies, keeping one for their records and giving the other to the defendant. That's what they say. The Supreme Court says you must give it. Now, almost no police departments that I know, except the ones that I've argued this in, and the next time I go back, they're all giving it out, actually hand those documents out on the evening in question. And there's 2 problems with that. Number 1 is you have the right, as Bob said, and they tell you right here, you have the right to an independent sample of your breath. How would you know that you need an independent sample of your breath for being over the limit if you're not given that piece of paper which tells you you're over the limit? You can walk out of there not knowing. People tell me all the time, geez, I don't know what my reading was. Hey, it might have been an 03 and it might have been a 33. We don't know, and the motorist doesn't know. So how can you talk about thwarting by not telling you what your blood alcohol reading was that night, as Chun mandates? You are thwarted in your desire or your perception of a need to have your breath tested independently. By the way, that is an illusory right, because most people think, well, I'll go to the hospital, I'll get a blood test. No, hospitals don't do forensic blood testing. Unless you come in with a prescription for a blood test or with a medical emergency, they will not take your blood to test it. They don't do it for forensic purposes. So you're going to have a physician in the middle of the day call up, order order a blood test for you and go and have a blood test taken. And that's just not going to happen as a practical matter, especially since most of our arrests, as you know, take place late in the evening or in the early morning hours. The failure to give the AIR means that you have to throw out the readings. Now, I have prepared a very good brief, and I'm telling you right now, the brief and the argument I have is unassailable. Unassailable. The logic is compelling. I've yet to win it. I've yet to win it. Why? Because every judge says to you the following: how does that affect the reading? If they don't give them the paper, how does that affect the reading? How does it make it inaccurate? And I say, well, it's not for you to ask that question. The Supreme Court has told you you must do it. You can't now go back and review the logic of the Supreme Court in reaching that decision and make an independent determination that you're going to overrule their clear holding in Chun. The second argument is, you want to know why? Because cops around the state were dialing a drunk. That is, on the old breathalyzer, which they were dealing with when they wrote Chun, is that, you could get a .06. The cop could write down a .11. There was no printout. There's no readout, not like we have on the Alka-Test, to say really what it was. They did that as they've ordered that sheet of paper be given to you so there can be no fraud. My argument to the judge is, yes, there is fraud. Yes, it's more difficult to do on the Alka-Test. But the Supreme Court said, you know what? For 2 friggin' cents, it probably costs 2 cents to print out an extra piece of paper. You're already printing out 1. Instead of 1, you press the number 2, and it prints out 2 copies, and it eliminates any possibility of fraud. They made a policy decision. You don't have the right to overrule it. And naturally, they'll say, nah, we're not gonna rule in your favor. I said, if you don't swat them over the head, if you don't keep out the readings, why would they feel impelled to follow the Supreme Court ruling? And the answer is they don't. And they walk out and they laugh. Ha ha ha, we don't need to do it. But the next time they do.